honored this year as the last official task in the presidential cycle to chair the awards committee. So I would like to thank my fellow awards committee participants for a very engaging process. They are Seth Blumsack of Penn State, Carol Dahl of Colorado School of Mines, Mark McCarthy of Toyota, and Shirley Neff of the Energy Information Administration. So I'm just going to jump right into the presentation of the Adelman Frankel Award. This year, the USAEE is jointly awarding the prestigious Adelman Frankel Award to U.S. Energy Information Administrator and U.S. Energy Administration Administrator, Adam Sieminski, and Deputy Administrator Dr. Howard Gruenspecht. So the unprecedented decision to jointly award USAEE's highest honor is based on what the committee perceived to be the unique synergies that have been created at EIA by the confluence of Adam and Howard's individual skills and leadership. And we believe these synergies to be inseparable and therefore worthy of a joint award. So when nominated by President Obama to be the EIA administrator, Adam, a past USAEE president and senior fellow, was a well-known and highly respected oil market analyst who had decades of private sector experience. Howard, who was also a USAEE senior fellow, was a seasoned hand at analyzing the energy sector for policymakers, based on firmly maintaining the necessary academic rigor in EIA's modeling and analysis of the natural energy system. From the outset, Adam determined to adapt EIA coverage of a dramatically changing oil and natural gas sector. And that was specifically to develop better indicators for ongoing market changes and technological progress, and to capture the changing energy flow dynamics. One of the things that he initiated was the monthly drilling productivity report, the results of which we saw this morning in the opening plenary. That was perceived as a better measure of actual drilling activity than the rig counts. Also, crude by rail data was introduced, and the Brent marker prices for waterborne crudes are now included, along with the WTI oil price. Adam has increased the emphasis on current energy markets, including providing a better understanding of the international markets, more critical than ever given the dramatic increases in refined product trade and proposals to export liquefied natural gas and possibly crude oil. Howard also has decades of experience in analyzing electricity markets and energy policy issues, including such topics as electricity restructuring, regulations affecting motor fuels and vehicles, energy-related environmental issues, and economy-wide energy modeling. Howard has consistently motivated EIA to pursue energy analysis within economically sound frameworks. Howard has been instrumental in extensive computer simulation modeling development projects and in many dozens of discrete analytic exercises, all in some manner intended to illuminate market dynamics and quantitative perspectives that characterize energy systems. Howard's zeal and attention to detail have helped EIA create a wide and deep portfolio of publicly available economic analyses of pertinent energy issues. EIA has long been a recognized leader in the gathering and dissemination of energy data and analytics, and to this point, the organization itself was awarded the 2002 USAEE Adelman Frankel Award. Adam Sieminski and Howard Gruenspecht are being honored with this year's award for the significance of their many and joint contributions to improving the depth, quantity, and accessibility of EIA's data and analytic products. These are products that support academic research, commercial decision-making, and government policy development on a global scale. So I would like to invite Adam and Howard to the podium sequentially to make some remarks, but I would like you to help me congratulate both of them on receiving this year's award.
Thank you very much, Lori. That was very generous of you. I'll now load up my 100 PowerPoint slides. Just kidding. So in 1973-74, when the oil embargo triggered a huge surge in interest in energy economics and transparent energy data, I was a 26-year-old policy analyst. Okay, anybody here 26 years old? Come on. Or less. Yeah. Working for a financial research boutique in Washington, I remember feelings of curiosity and respect. As many of my friends, Joy Dunkerley, Mike Telson, Dave Knapp, Bill Hogan, Denny Ellerman, and Carol Dahl worked to build this global association and labored with folks like Fred Abel to establish the Washington, D.C. chapter in 1978. If I left anybody out that thought they were a friend of mine, please let me know. The organization was originally called the Association of Energy Economists, but quickly added the international identifier and almost as quickly changed of economists to for economics to recognize that engineers, statisticians, physicists, geologists, financial analysts, and others were deeply interested in the subject too. By the early 1980s, I was an active member of this organization. The contacts and conferences of this association deeply informed my work as an energy and commodity analyst over all these years, and I want to thank you for that. In 2012, I determined that it would be give back time when I joined EIA. What I wanted to do was to bring to EIA a business-oriented sense of being nimble, timely, and relevant. I've been pushing for more current data that reflects dynamic markets and the information age, and EIA has responded with resolve and success to that challenge. While credit for this is shared with prior ministers, and especially Howard, who is also being honored here today, I remain steadfast in promoting a today mindset as the key to accurately producing yesterday's statistics and openly projecting tomorrow's outlooks. Notice I said openly, not accurately. Producing accurate forecasts, that's like really hard. Producing open forecasts that can be checked, that can be compared, where you can look at the deltas against other forecasts. That's really useful. And that matters enormously to good energy economics and good energy policy. So to that end, I'm going to give you a quick rundown of some of the things that we've been doing at EIA. And Lori actually talked about some of these. Domestic oil and gas production data from the EIA 914 survey. It's now available each month in oil as well as natural gas. When I arrived at EIA, this was a gas-only survey covering 6 states. Pennsylvania wasn't one of them. Today, that report starts with direct operator surveys of Pennsylvania, North Dakota, and 14 other key oil and gas states that together account for some 95% of total national production of oil and gas. Hourly electricity load data, and Howard really deserves a lot of the credit for this one from the EIA 930 report, which is currently in beta testing. Electricity markets matter in real time, and this will be the nation's first hourly federal statistical report. As far as I know, it's going to be the first hourly report by any statistical agency anywhere in the world. By the way, I took an electricity 101 class. I'm an oil guy, you know, so I did electricity 101. It was put on by the National Capital Area chapter of this organization, the NCAC, before I was confirmed as administrator. Data collection. EIA's legacy surveys were built up over 40 years of layering on. They were based on diverse systems with little commonality. We've been working diligently to modernize and standardize our surveys while being careful to maintain data continuity. Today in Energy has become a major outlet for energy news of all kinds. Internally, we call it TIE. TIE is rightfully placed at the top center of EIA's homepage. It covers a wide range of worthwhile topics in the energy space. In response to the swift rise in oil and gas production, one of the other things that was clear to me was we needed to sidestep lags associated with surveys, and our drilling productivity report does that in the oil and gas production area. At my confirmation hearings, I told the U.S. Senate Energy Committee that we needed a better understanding of how much crude oil was moving by rail, a nearly total black hole. As Lori said, we now have a crude by rail report that uses administrative data to estimate flows that in the past were overwhelmingly shipped by pipeline. And by the way, we're expanding the crude by rail report to include propane and a bunch of other energy forms, almost to the end now. We have increased the emphasis on international activities. We've incorporated Brent in our reports and outlooks. This week, later this week, we're going to host the third in a series of workshops involving trilateral energy data harmonization with Canada and Mexico. Shirley Neff, former president of the USAEE, and now a senior advisor to me and Howard, is coordinating this effort to reconcile and to map cross-border energy data flows. So now, as all of you know, EIA is not a policy office. One of my favorite introductions was Adam is one policy remark away from returning to the private sector. But I'm very proud of the work that John Conte's group has done to inform policymakers on pressing current issues. This includes reports like the effects of removing restrictions on U.S. crude oil exports and the analysis of the impacts of the Clean Power Plan, all of which help Congress in its deliberations on these important economics issues. So in closing, I'd like to remind you of why transparent data and good analysis are critical. And I'm going to paraphrase Maury Adelman in this. Maury actually talked about decreasing marginal returns, but I think the translation of this is knowledge improves productivity. So I hope you all continue to take advantage of the knowledge that's available to you in coming to meetings like this, that the IAEE and the USAEE help you with, and EIA's knowledge, including our new information and analytical tools, which are available at our website. And won't you please accept my sincerest thank yous. Thank you.
Decades of experience. That's very scary. But it's very nice to receive this award, and I thank Lori and the other members of the nominating committee for thinking of me. The award is particularly meaningful to me, given the excellence of the people it's named for, as well as the excellence of past recipients. I didn't know Paul Frankel, but I do fondly remember Maury Adelman from his participation well into his later years in meetings of the Center on Energy and Environmental Policy Research at MIT that I also frequently attended. And it's particularly interesting to me that many of his ideas, again, such as what Adam mentioned, the competition between resource depletion and technology advance, are just as relevant in current discussions of shale gas and tight oil, things that he never, imagined. He had pretty good imagination, so maybe he did. I shouldn't speak for him. And they're just as relevant as they were when he first raised them in a very different context. So in the classic Oscar mode, I'd like to thank Adam Sieminski and Guy Caruso and Richard Newell, two previous EIA administrators that I've had the pleasure of working for in my present capacity. I'd also be remiss in not recognizing EIA staff, who are actually the people who deliver the data and analysis products, both old and new, which policymakers, markets, and the public rely on to provide independent and impartial information regarding energy and its interaction with the economy and the environment. My road to energy economics was certainly a winding one, and in many respects a matter of happenstance. Long before I came to EIA, I've been blessed with great bosses, mentors, and colleagues, starting with Bill Nordhaus at Yale, who first brought me to Washington back in the Carter administration. Yes, it's true. Of course, I was only in college when Adam was already an oil analyst, so I don't feel that bad. But my colleagues at Carnegie Mellon, right here in Pittsburgh, notably Lester Labe, who I miss terribly, Dick Schmalensee at MIT, who was a great boss during my second stint during the Council of Economic Advisors, I've also worked with many talented senior officials, and to be honest, some less talented ones, in my previous service at the Department of Energy, including my time at the department's policy office during the Bush 41 and Clinton administrations. So regrets, I've had a few, is the lyric Paul Anka wrote for Frank Sinatra's My Way, and I guess one would be a fool not to have any. I do remember that as a new faculty member at Carnegie Mellon, right after one of my annual discussions about salary and support, I know there are a lot of Carnegie Mellon people here, with the dean of the school, who at that time I think was Betsy Bailey, did a lot of regulatory economics, wondering why anybody would ever take a job like that, where you spend half your time negotiating with faculty members who inevitably had an inflated self-opinion, and the other half trying to raise money. The joke, as always, was on me, as I followed what really essentially turns out to be the equivalent government career path, and one that has the same kind of satisfactions and frustrations, having a role in shaping something that is more than one's own work, but at the cost of diverting effort from one's own work. So that's a choice, and and I'm all in all pretty happy with it, especially get a nice award like this. So Rahm Emanuel, he's not a member of USAEE, but he is the current mayor of Chicago, former chief of staff to President Obama, and he's noted for his observation never to let a serious crisis go to waste. So the same dictum applies to an award ceremony, so I'd like to remind all of those in this room that EIA is always looking for energy economists at various levels of their careers, and in talking to friends in industry, consulting, and academia, in describing what makes work at EIA and in government attractive despite its inherent frustrations, I've expressed a view that it's a combination of the work itself plus getting great seats for a show that anybody interested in policy would find immensely entertaining. And they can't tax your non-pecuniary income. So you could do a lot worse. And once again, I'd like to thank USAEE and the members of the nominating committee for this kind of award. Thank you very much.
Thank you both for those remarks. I'd like to now present the awards. There is a monetary award that goes with this, $1,000, which we have split between Howard and Adam. Unfortunately, Adam, being a political appointee, is unable to accept that. So we have, the USAEE has donated his share to the Student Scholarship Fund. So some of you students next year may benefit from that. So I've got a plaque and a check for Howard.
I'm giving mine to the Student Scholarship Fund.
However, I'm not sure how it works, but yeah, thank you, Howard. Again, to all the students out there, be sure to thank Howard. So the next order of business for the award ceremony, we also have the honor of recognizing 3 of our more senior members as senior fellows of the organization. And the 3 that were chosen this year are Bob Borgstrom, Amy Jaffe, and Andrew Slaughter. And I'm just going to give a brief bio of each of those and then ask them each to come up and receive their award. I'll wait until we've introduced all of you. So Bob Borgstrom is an independent advisor on energy, regulatory policy, and management. He has over 35 years of management and international consulting experience with utilities, their regulatory authorities, and related energy businesses. Bob has corporate experience with Nexent, Bechtel, Pricewaterhouse, Columbia Gas Distribution, Stone & Webster, and the U.S. Navy. So Bob is a longtime USAEE member, and he's been the editor of the Dialogue for about 5 years. So he's our first senior fellow that we're recognizing this year. Congratulations, Bob. Amy Jaffe is the Executive Director of Energy and Sustainability at the University of California, Davis's Graduate School of Management and Institute of Transportation Studies, excuse me. She was recently appointed Executive Advisor to the University of California Regents. She was the Wallace S. Wilson Fellow for Energy Studies and the James A. Baker III Institute for Public Policy. She was their scholar there for 18 years. I put my glasses on. Sorry. She was also an industry journalist and editor for Energy Intelligence and Petroleum Intelligence Weekly. Amy is a sought-after speaker at USAEE conferences and will be part of our closing plenary for this conference. So let's give a round of applause for Amy. And last but certainly not least, Andrew Slaughter is the Executive Director at the Deloitte Center for Energy Solutions, and I would highly recommend their free webinars that come across periodically. He's worked in the oil and gas industry and at top-tier consulting practices, including at Shell, IHS Sierra, and DRI McGraw-Hill. While at Shell, Andrew chaired the Resource and Supply Task Group of the National Petroleum Council. A native of the UK, Andrew has served on the USAEE Council and as a USAEE Presidential Advisor. So let's give a hand to Andrew. I understand that Amy is not here yet. She'll be here tomorrow, so if I can ask Bob and Andrew to come up and receive their awards. And if all of the senior fellows can gather for a photograph after the lunch, that would be terrific. So again, for Andrew, Amy, and Bob, congratulations. Thank you. Okay, thank you. And now I'm going to introduce Peter Hartley, the IAEE president, to make an IAEE award. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Laurie. I am actually standing in for Wumi Lauder, who's the immediate past president of the IAEE. And I'd like to thank Wumi very much for the awards committee that he organised and the wonderful job they did in selecting Severin Borenstein to receive the award from the IAEE today. Severin is E.T. Grether Professor of Business Administration and Public Policy at the Haas School of Business, and Research Associate for the Energy Institute, Haas. He's also Director Emeritus at the University of California Energy Institute and the Energy Institute at Haas. He received his AB from UC Berkeley and PhD in economics from MIT. His research focuses on business competition, strategy and regulation. He's published extensively on the airline industry, the oil and gasoline industries and electricity markets. His current research projects include the economics of renewable energy, economic policies for reducing greenhouse gases, alternative models of retail electricity pricing, and competitive dynamics in the airline industry. Severin is also a research associate of the National Bureau of Economic Research in Cambridge, MA. He served on the board of governors of the California Power Exchange from 1997 to 2003. During 1999 to 2000, he was a member of the California Attorney General's Gasoline Price Task Force. In 2010-2011, he was also a member of the US Secretary of Transportation Ray LaHood's Future of Aviation Advisory Committee. 2012-13, he served on the Emissions Market Assessment Committee to advise the California Air Resources Board on the operation of California's cap and trade market for greenhouse gases. Since 2014, he has been a member of the California Energy Commission's Petroleum Market Advisory Committee. And I'd like to invite Severin up and offer him this award for the outstanding contributions to the profession.
Well, I'm disappointed there's no check. I was going to donate it to Howard Gruenspecht. Sorry, Howard. Thank you very much. I am really honored to receive this award. I have been working in energy, well, certainly since I was an undergrad in the 70s and took my first energy policy course while I was becoming an economics major, and sort of saw the overlap there between those two topics. And this was just after the oil crisis. I was just finishing high school during the oil crisis. But I did actually serve in the Carter administration. I, at that time, right after college, went to Washington and worked at the Civil Aeronautics Board during airline deregulation under Alfred Kahn, who was certainly one of the formative forces in my career and became a lifelong friend. And Fred had, prior to coming to the CAB, had of course been head of the New York Public Service Commission and had taken microeconomics into the regulated electricity sector in a way that had never really been done before. After that, though, I really went into airlines and did a lot of research on airlines in the 80s. And then in about 86, when I was an assistant professor at Michigan, I was buying gas and at a station in Ann Arbor and noticed that leaded and unleaded gasoline cost the same, which was unusual. Prior to that, leaded gasoline had been cheaper. And I asked the owner of the station why that was, and he said, because we buy them for the same price. And I looked across the street and I said, well, what about them? He says, yep, they buy them for the same price too, but they don't sell them for the same price. And so since I had done a lot of work on price discrimination in the airline industry, this got me interested in gasoline and brought me back to studying energy again. That, through a number of papers on the oil and gasoline industry, landed me the job of director of the UC Energy Institute in 1994. That was sort of a perfect storm because in a couple months after I became director, California released their first draft of the restructuring plan for the electricity market. I had never done research in electricity at that point. I had taught regulation courses, so I knew some basics. But I ended up spending most of the next 10 years studying particularly market power in electricity markets. And with my longtime colleague, Jim Bushnell, who in many ways should be also receiving this award. Most of the stuff I've done in energy, certainly on the electricity side, I've done with Jim. We did some work on market power, and in 1997 presented a paper at our annual power research conference of the electricity at UC Berkeley on the potential for market power in the deregulated electricity market in California, at which we said that prices of electricity in California could go as high as $250 a megawatt hour. And we were practically hooted out of the conference. This was viewed as just ridiculous. Although it became clear to me at that point that there wasn't a deep understanding of what was going on because an executive at the conference from one of the three, from a major utility, came up to me afterwards and said, "That's ridiculous. Nothing like that's ever happened before." And I thought, if you think that the past of a regulated environment is telling you about what the market is going to be like in a deregulated environment, your company is really not prepared for what's about to happen. And it turned out that company was really not prepared for what was about to happen. Since then, in 2004 and 2005, I've transitioned, as many of us have, to working much more on environmental issues, which has been a really great fun and brought me back to an early interest I had in environmental economics, and most recently to studying cap and trade markets, which the more I study, the less I become a fan of, and the more I become a fan of taxes. The work that I've done recently with Jim, of course, Jim Bushnell, Frank Wolak, and Matt Zaragoza, looking at the potential volatility in cap and trade markets, has really sort of brought to bear many of the same issues that actually came up back when we were studying the California electricity market. And then finally, I've been appointed to and most recently been made chair of the Petroleum Market Advisory Committee of the California Energy Commission. As many of you know, California uses a different blend of gasoline than anywhere else in the world, which isolates our gasoline market from the rest, and brings me back to all of the same questions of the California electricity crisis. California, since the Exxon Torrance refinery explosion in February, has averaged about 80 cents a gallon higher in gasoline prices than the rest of the US, when just taxes and the cost of our our blend and the cap and trade market in California should justify about a 40-cent differential. And we are back once again to figuring out how much of this is scarcity and how much of this is market power, which in some sense is one of the, if not the fundamental questions of energy economics. And it's interesting, as I have gone through my career and studied these different topics, the thing that economists have really brought to the table, which with all due respect to the engineers in the audience, often gets lost in the often simple analyses that get done of these markets, is the role of incentives, which is appropriate since that's what economics is about. And in fact, that's what in large parts has been overlooked. It was certainly overlooked in the California electricity crisis. I still have this vivid memory in January of 2001, in the middle of the California electricity crisis. One afternoon, I was actually riding the exercise bike, watching Ray Davis, the governor of California, give his State of the State address, and listening to him say, if everybody is just out to make as much money as they can, this restructuring isn't going to work. And thinking, wow, if we didn't design a system that is robust to everybody just trying to make as much money as they can, this really isn't going to work. But as much as I think the role of incentives has played and has been a big part of what we can bring to the table, I think more recently I've come to appreciate, and many of us have, I think, things that don't fall under traditional economics but play a major role in analysis and behavior. And the first, of course, is behavioral economics and the role of psychology. In electricity, we're seeing this not just with what O-Power does, but O-Power has certainly been a pioneer, but in a lot of behavioral interventions and nudges and so forth in energy efficiency and other areas that have turned out to be potentially very powerful, and also potentially help me answer some of those questions that were ringing around, and I have to say also coming out of my mouth during graduate school, when it seemed like the models we were writing down actually didn't fully describe how I behaved as a consumer, and the things I was willing to do to save money or not willing to do to save money that really weren't consistent with the simple models. And so I think that that has been a great gain in the depth of our understanding. And the other is the role of distributional considerations, which has often been overlooked. I got my PhD in the early 1980s. A lot of the caricatures of economists were much more accurate back then. That is, that all we cared about was our model, and if it didn't have much empirical bite, that was okay. The empirical bite wasn't that interesting or was just wrong anyway. And behavioral economics was certainly not something one spent a lot of time talking out loud about at that time. And the other was distributional considerations. And I'll just close by saying, this was really driven home to me. I was at a conference on climate change at Stanford a few weeks ago. And somebody there, and I don't want to attribute it because I might misattribute, but someone there pointed out as we were talking about the impact of various policies on world GDP, that a policy that completely destroyed all of sub-Saharan Africa would reduce world GDP by 2%. And so that can't be the only goal here. There's obviously a lot more going on than just a policy that tries to maximize world GDP. And distributional considerations are certainly a big part of that. And I think that economics has a lot to contribute there. In fact, I've spent a fair amount of the last 5 years doing work in distributional impacts. And I'd encourage people who are thinking, especially the younger people in the audience, to recognize that that's also an area where I think there are great opportunities. In fact, I think this field is just at a tremendous point. There are great questions and tremendously important questions to address. We have powerful tools and a much wider array of powerful tools than we had even 10 years ago. And the data are fantastic. And if you put all that together, I think this is a field that is rich and is going to make fabulous contributions for many years to come. Thank you very much.
It's my honor and pleasure now to introduce David A. Hounshell, who is the David M. Roderick Professor of Technology and Social Change at Carnegie Mellon University, where he is a member of the Department of Social and Decision Sciences. He is also on the faculty of the Department of Engineering and Public Policy. Hounshell received his undergraduate degree in electrical engineering from the Southern Methodist University in Dallas, Texas in 1972, and his PhD in history from the University of Delaware in 1978. He has been on the faculties of Harvey Mudd College, the University of Delaware, and Carnegie Mellon University. He has also been a guest professor at the Technical University of Munich, Germany, and Chambers Technology University in Gothenburg, Sweden. His research is focused on the locus of science, technology, business, and government, i.e. innovation, broadly conceived. Hounshell is a fellow of the American Association for the Advancement of Science, past president of the Society for the History of Technology, awardee of his Leonardo da Vinci Medal in 2007, its Dexter Prize in 1987, a recipient of the Business History Conference's Williamson Medal in 1992, Newcomer Prize 1992, winner of the IAEE Roderick J. Thompson Award 1978. Since joining the Carnegie Mellon faculty and moving to Pittsburgh in 1991, Hounshell has made the Pittsburgh region and its industrial history one of the objects of his research. His presentation today, 2 Centuries of Energy Transitions in the Pittsburgh Region, reflects this research interest as well as his regular teaching of a course, Energy and Climate, History, Science, Technology, and Policy in the United States, 1776 to 2076. Thank you.
Thank you, Tina. I need some administrative direction here. My watch says it's 2:20, and the sessions begin at 2:30, so we're going to squeeze. And my presentation was supposed to be 20 minutes, followed by 10 minutes of Q&A, so let me have some direction here, and I can work on the fly. Okay, that's fine. So I hope you can see the slides. If there's somebody in the house who could lower the house lights at least, we'll leave this grand view because it's part of the presentation. Okay, so my focus today is on energy transitions, and we have a definition of transition, the process or a period of changing from one state of condition to another. That's from the web. And I'm following largely Dr. Smeal's definition of energy transitions in his book 2010, where he talks about the change in composition or a structure of the primary energy supply. and a gradual shift from a specific pattern of energy provisions to a new state of an energy system. As Smil goes on to note, the focus should always be on the process, not just its initial and concluding stages, but the most revealing analysis must deal with several key variables and use different measures to trace their change. This change can be traced on scales ranging from local to global, and a universally experienced transition from biomass to fossil fuels is certainly the best example in the quotation. Today my focus is on the Pittsburgh region as it fits or doesn't fit within the larger regional, state, national, international, and global context. So we're talking about transition, and it really depends upon the time and geographical scales in the analysis, of course. Energy transitions can appear to be long and protracted, as Smil suggests in his work, in which, if you plot these transitions, the curves are slow and smooth largely. Or these transitions can be sharp and sudden, and you have rapid change, and you have abrupt curves. And of course, technological development and economic diffusion of prime movers and other energy-using technologies play very important roles in this process. And as Smil goes on to talk about, he says that because of the requisite technical and infrastructure imperatives, and because of numerous and often entirely unforeseen social and economic implications, basically just what Severin Borenstein was talking about, behavioral kinds of things, energy transitions taking place in large economies and on the global scale are inherently pronounced affairs. Usually they take decades to accomplish. So we'll see in terms of how this works out in the Pittsburgh region. Now, Pittsburgh region varies across time. You can go from a 1791 map where it shows Pittsburgh on a tiny little dot, and I'll show you that in just a second, or you can use official definitions of Pittsburgh region, MSA and CSA kinds of things. And so here we have 1791 map. You have Pittsburgh right here. Let me get my arrow on the thing. And here you have Pittsburgh. And one of the things you notice about Pittsburgh, and you can see it out the window if you walk down to the point where the three rivers come together, is these rivers play a very, very important role in defining the region and its economic activity and its energy transitions over a 250 year period of time. This is from Pittsburgh in 1795. You can actually see it on the pavement outside the hotel there and take a closer look at it. And again, you see these rivers a very important role in defining what Pittsburgh is. This is Pittsburgh today, a late 2015 map. And you can see this is the official incorporated region of Pittsburgh, and again you can see the rivers. This is Allegheny County, so sometimes I'm going to be talking about Pittsburgh proper, other times I'll talk about Allegheny County. And then Allegheny County falls within this larger MSA definition, that's the green. And then you add the yellow counties to the north of Pittsburgh and into West Virginia and Ohio, and you get the CSA. And you go on to larger definitions of the tri-state region, and you'll see why those regions, those definitions vary in just a second. Now, this is the Pittsburgh region according to the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection there, and again, you see Allegheny County and its place in it. And again, these counties in this definition defined largely by oil and gas. Now, geography matters. Geography matters, technology matters, and if you just look at this map, and if you haven't been in Pennsylvania or been across it or hiked it or whatever, the Allegheny Mountains, just wave after wave after wave of ranges going from Philadelphia to Pittsburgh matter. It's really not until the railroad broke this barrier and finally connecting Pittsburgh with Philadelphia in 1854 that you see essentially the region integrated into a larger economy. And energy plays a vital role in that. The railroad plays a vital role, and there's this symbiotic relationship between railroad development and energy exploitation, energy mining, and energy production, largely coal. So Pittsburgh's first energy transition was the transition from essentially wood to coal. It takes place pretty much entirely in the antebellum period before the Civil War. It's much earlier and much faster than the nation as a whole. The transition point for the nation is 1880 or in the early 1880s when essentially fossil fuels surpassed wood as an energy source. And so you've got at least 30, 40 years of difference. And this is owing to the abundance of coal in the region. If you look out behind you, you see Mount Washington. And Mount Washington once had a very thick seam of what was called Pittsburgh coal, still is called Pittsburgh coal. And wood was